Welcome to Aliens and Cowboys Podcast. I'm Garrett. With me tonight is Joe.
Hey, everybody.
Nate, unfortunately, not with us tonight. He's got some things going on, so we're probably going to make fun of Nate tonight, and he's not going to be able to defend himself.
Do a little bit of a reversal.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right.
Unfortunately, there will come a day, probably sometime in the future, where I'm not on the podcast, and the two of you can go ahead and just start
taking the gloves off, Garrett. Yeah, it's going to happen.
But I do hold the right to do a rebuttal.
Oh, absolutely.
So we missed you, Joe, and I'm glad you're back because I was really excited to cover this particular trilogy of action movies. I really like the Jason Bourne series. I know you had not seen it, so obviously with you not being at the Bourne Identity episode, I'm going to want your feedback on that episode to start, or once we get into the movie, and then we'll break down the Bourne Supremacy like we always do. First things first, though, I want to give some feedback. So I had quite a few people, more than I thought, actually get a hold of me and tell me that they agreed with the premise that Nate and I had at the end, that we believed, at least post-movie 1, that the Bourne Identity was a stronger movie than John Wick 1, and that Jason Bourne could defeat John Wick in a battle. So you and I have not discussed the Bourne Supremacy, and we've barely discussed the Bourne Identity. We will withhold your conversation on the Bourne versus Wick till the end of this episode. So if you guys want to just skip ahead to that, I don't know what time, that will probably be an hour and a half down the road, like it always is, so you can skip to the end. Before we get started, too, I wanted to go through some pop culture with you. So I'm going to let you do Stranger Things in a second.
Sure, sounds good.
I have not watched it. I know that you've gotten pretty far into it, if not all of it.
Yes.
I wanted to correct a few things I made mistakes on last week that Nate, unfortunately, doesn't know enough to not to correct me. I think I called it the Paramount Network with the HBO consolidation of their library. It's not. It's Warner Brothers. So Warner Brothers came out today, and big news, they acknowledge they're taking Friends from Netflix, right? So that's huge.
That is huge.
But they're going to consolidate to HBO Max. So I think they're taking HBO, Cinemax, all their stuff from CW. Everything's consolidating, plus the Warner Brother movie library into Warner Brothers' own streaming service.
Jeez.
It's going to be great.
Yeah. Sounds like a great resource for all the shows, certainly.
And just like last week, I currently subscribe to HBO, and I think it's like $15 a month. I don't know what it is. And this is $17 a month. So all the additional stuff I'll get off of it for $2 just makes total sense.
Heck yeah.
So there's this great, I think I sent it to you, what do they call it, the GIF or whatever it is, or the GIF or whatever.
Yes.
It's a scene, it's a clip from the Civil War, Captain America, where Bucky and Captain America are just beating the crap out of Iron Man, and it was basically HBO, Disney Plus, and then Netflix with Iron Man just getting stomped on right now.
Yeah, that's
awesome.
A good visual representation of, I think, what's going to happen.
I mean, Netflix is going to have to, they're going to get a lot of their IP pulled.
They are. Well, they are, if I'm understanding you correctly, they're pulling Friends entirely. So now they're losing The Office, which we've talked about in previous episodes.
Yes.
They're losing Friends.
Yep.
I mean, I think they're really going to have to turn to making some really strong original content to try and keep up with this type of thing.
You know, the one thing they're kind of missing is a comedy like that. I think The Ranch is really good from what I've seen. I've only seen a couple. I don't know if they're called parts or seasons. I don't know what they call it, but maybe 2 or 3 of the parts. Sam Elliott's amazing in that.
Yes,
Ashton Kutcher's good. It's had its own controversy because of, I don't remember the guy's name, that he was the secondary brother from that 70s show.
Yeah.
But they don't seem to have a lot of those comedies that you can just put on and ignore, like without going back to like Cheers and Frasier, and some of those old like 90s, 80s, late 80s, early 90s comedies.
Yeah, and some of them, I tried watching one and unfortunately didn't care for it too much. It was like No Good Nick or something like that. It has Sean Astin, actually.
Okay.
I love Sean Astin. I think he's amazing.
Okay.
But just not that great. It's kind of a sitcom setup that they've got, and didn't particularly care for it too much. Turn Up Charlie with Idris Elba, however.
Okay.
They marketed that one as a comedy, but there's a lot more to it than that. It's not something, just as you mentioned, that you can kind of turn on in the back, like an Office or Friends, and you rewatch it all the time. It doesn't have that same kind of capability, I don't think. There's still a lot more serious qualities to that Turn Up Charlie show.
Sure.
While very good, I like what I've seen of it, it's not quite as lighthearted of a comedy at all times as you're looking for in a Friends or Office or whatever the case may be. So
absolutely.
I totally agree with you. Yeah. I think they need to come up with something.
They're missing those like syndicated comedies that have 100 episodes already done that you can just sit there and just numb out while you're watching or listening, or doing something else.
Exactly.
And they might get to that point. I haven't seen a lot of their original comedy, so I can't speak to that. I just know that obviously the infancy of Netflix, or not being that far into its original content producing, doesn't have more than a couple seasons at the most of their own shows. So this will be something that they'll need to step up on, because they're, and you can add, I don't know how much they make revenue-wise, but we do know they paid $100 million to keep Friends for 1 year. And, maybe $100 million doesn't seem like a lot as far as, billions that they probably do make, but that show's over. It's not a brand new content show. They're simply keeping and paying $100 million for reruns.
Yeah.
That's how important that is for their ratings.
Absolutely.
So it'll be interesting when push comes to shove. Is The Office or Friends enough to probably make you pull from Netflix? No. But how many of these other networks are going to pull their IP and then start producing their own content? Especially because Netflix isn't $7 anymore. It's, $13 maybe now?
Yeah, at least. I think pushing 15 possibly.
If you tell me I get the Warner Brother library, HBO, Cinemax, CW, anything else you want, everything they've got, why would I not pay $15, $17 a month for that versus $13 for Netflix? Because majority of Netflix content, I'm not going to watch. It's just not stuff that I care about. It's not stuff that I'm going to take the time to do.
Fair enough. And to your point, I know we've brought this up in previous episodes too. There are a couple shows, which we'll segue into this in just a minute, but Stranger Things, one of my favorite shows. Like, that skyrocketed to be one of my favorite shows of all time. But you know what? If it's that and maybe a handful of other shows on Netflix, it's the return to disc set mentality that I'm probably going to have in favor of a Disney Plus, or now what we're talking about with this new streaming service, something like that, because I'm getting to a point where I can't justify the cost of Netflix in addition to some of these other streaming services that I know I'm going to be subscribing to.
When you could do a one-time punch for $40 for the season 1 of that Stranger Things, right? Or $30 for Stranger Things.
Exactly.
Right? So, I agree with you. It's one of those things where that's the problem that they're going to run into, is we're going to have so much siloed content that we're going to, if you don't start picking and choosing, your bill's going to be back to the $150 cable bill, which forces everybody to cut it. And the worst part is, you're not going to have that live TV if you're like a sports fan, right? Or if you want the news. You're not going to get that live content that you did, previously with a small cable bill.
Yep.
So I know that we use YouTube TV, which is relatively cheap compared to DirecTV, at least what we had. But when you start tacking on everything we subscribe to, we're probably still north of $100 on subscription. So
it adds up quick. It really does.
Definitely. A couple things else. Game of Thrones came out with their prequel. They haven't titled it yet. It might be called The Long Night or The Longest Night. It's supposed to be, I want to say, I don't know if they said 1,000 or 100 years prior. Maybe 1,000. It's supposed to be Casterly Rock. Naomi Watts is the main character. I don't know if they released her name yet.
Oh, very cool.
She's very blonde. It looks very Lannister-y. Light, but it's not a Lannister.
Okay,
so,
interesting.
And there's been theories on whether they'll actually make the show revolve around her, as everybody thought it would around Ned Stark in the first season, but actually make the show revolve around her. Like
now actually do that.
I mean, let me ask you that, because think about that. Do you want this Game of Thrones next show? Do you want to go in there with the expectation that everybody's going to die or die off at any time, like they did the original, or do you want to say, okay, let's settle down? The last season was kind of disappointing. Left some bad taste in at least my mouth. I know other people's mouths. Let's actually build a show around one character and see where their story goes.
I would like that approach to it. And I find it very interesting that we've arrived at this point. Flashback, 10 years ago, roughly, to when Game of Thrones and The Walking Dead, I'll throw this out there as well, first started to kind of subvert our expectations where nobody's safe. Anybody could be killed off at any time. And it kind of jostled things around. It made it exciting and kind of this anxiety-inducing experience to watch. That was cool for a while. But now I think we're almost coming full circle. We've seen a lot of that now. That's the thing to do still, I would say, is nobody's safe. Let's scale it back. I would be 100% on board with, in that Game of Thrones universe, having us follow a character. They are the primary character. And sure, you want some twists and turns, but let's see how their story goes and kind of really dig in and focus on that from a couple perspectives rather than all these different perspectives. So yeah, I'm totally on board if they decide to kind of scale things down a bit and focus on a couple individual stories rather than this huge saga of multiple stories.
From my understanding, though, it's also supposed to kind of take place around the very first Battle of the White Walkers. And so you're supposed to get kind of like the creation of the Night King and really the first incarnate of him. And
Is this about like Brand the Builder and everything too? Have you seen anything else about?
I've heard his name, but again,
Okay.
I haven't looked and seen if anything officially has come out with that.
Gotcha.
But, we'll have to see. That's obviously a ways down, but they've had. I don't know. I can't tell if it's a photo from the actual production of the Naomi Watts set, but it looks like it is. And so, like I said, that still is out there.
Nice.
Also, I saw that they are going to reboot the Mortal Kombat movie, and they just actually put their Sub-Zero. So they casted Sub-Zero. It's Joe Taslim, and he was in Fast and Furious 6. He's in the movie The Raid. I can't picture him in Fast and Furious 6. So I'm not sure exactly who he plays. I've never seen The Raid, but I liked Mortal Kombat 1. Mortal Kombat 2 obviously is a horrible movie. It's interesting because I think Mortal Kombat 11, the video game, just came out and was actually pretty popular and well received. So the idea that they're going to try to capitalize on this, of course, right, and try to expand this universe into another movie.
It makes sense for them to
your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Mortal Kombat, they've tried to break into the movie scene on multiple occasions, just like you were saying. We've had movies about the Mortal Kombat universe out there in the past. I think if they can make it pretty close to I think it was a YouTube series. Well, it was prior to YouTube actually creating the content, but it was something people uploaded to YouTube.
Yeah, very violent.
Very violent. It was really dark, but it fit the overall theme of Mortal Kombat, and especially the current games, from what I understand. I haven't played many of the games at all. I remember playing the originals, and there's a certain amount of campiness in those, which that's a through line, even to the versions today. I think there's some campiness to them, but obviously as graphics have advanced, it's beyond brutal. Like, the fatalities are the most gory thing I've ever seen. So I don't think they need to lean into that all the way, because they could do some really disturbing things that I don't think we need to see.
Absolutely.
But the content is there. I think the demand is there.
Yeah.
So if they do it right, it could be a kickoff to a new franchise. Who knows?
I don't think I've played Mortal Kombat since Mortal Kombat 3, probably.
Yeah, it's been a while.
And I will say that the first Mortal Kombat was actually the first Super Nintendo game I ever had.
Oh, nice.
So I was like second or third grade. Obviously, you get Super Mario World, I think it is, with the Super Nintendo.
Okay,
but unbeknownst to my mother, my father bought us Mortal Kombat, which is a very violent game for a second grader. But really, it was a really fun game.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember, too. It's funny you mentioned that, because I also remember being, I don't know, I was 5 or 6 maybe at the time, and the friends across the street, I'd go over to their place, and they would play Mortal Kombat. Yep. So I'm not sure my parents knew I was playing Mortal Kombat at that age, but the secret's out now. So
last thing I wanted to bring up, too, I wanted your opinion on this, and then I'm going to turn it over for you, because I want you to talk about Stranger Things and The Witcher. Because we got some more information on The Witcher last week that you weren't here to give us. I recently had watched 3, 4, 5, and 6 of the Mission Impossible series.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And I actually this weekend watched the first 2 Star Trek movies with the Chris Pine, the revamped, rebooted series by J.J. Abrams. And I realized Simon Pegg has really encapsulated a lot of my life lately. He's in 6 of the last 8 movies I saw.
Oh, he's in the Mission Impossible movies.
He's in from 3 through 6. He's in all the Mission Impossibles.
That's right.
And he's in the Star Treks. And I forgot how much I actually enjoy him as an actor. He's really funny when he needs to be, really serious when he needs to be. He's a really great side character, great addition. But so that's all I had. I just want to talk about the fact that Simon Pegg. But my question is, how come Star Trek is not as good as it needs to be? We don't talk about Star Trek, at least this rebooted series, like we do talk about Star Wars, the Marvel Universe, DC, even DC. We don't talk about Star Trek anymore. Why do you think that is?
Yeah. That's a great question. And I think some of it might have to do, well, at least for me personally, I don't know, taking a step back, looking at the overall cultural topic of Star Trek. But for me personally, it's never been as important to me as some of the other things that we do talk about frequently. Okay. That being said, I really do enjoy the first 2 movies. I've not seen the third, which I think has Idris Elba as the villain.
Yeah, it's not as good, and that's why it kind of tanked a little bit, and it did not meet expectations, and that's why they, from my understanding, did not do the 4th one.
Gotcha.
And I know that Tarantino was hooked on to potentially direct a 4th Star Trek movie.
I don't know where things are at with that.
Yes, I don't either.
Well, and speaking, kind of ties into our streaming service as well, discussion we were having, but CBS All Access has Star Trek Discovery, I believe it's called, and that has, from what I can see, or read rather, I have not seen the show, but it looks like kind of a roller coaster in terms of how it's being received.
Yeah.
Like, people hate some episodes, love the others. Some people say they're destroying Star Trek's legacy. Other people are saying, no, it's going the direction it needs to forge ahead in this new era. And I don't know. I haven't seen it, so I can't really comment.
I mean, I remember at least these first two movies. I really enjoyed Zachary Quinto as Spock.
Yeah.
I thought he was
super good.
A great representation of that character. And I thought he was the best part of the movie. But I thought about this. Just because the third one bombs and they stop, I don't understand why we have these potentials to have these world-building movies and these series, and if one flops, they just don't want to do it anymore because they're afraid to not make money. If they stopped at Thor 1 or 2, you never would get Thor 3.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or Captain America 1. If they would have stopped after 1, you wouldn't get, Winter Soldier.
Winter Soldier,
Civil
which is
War.
great. Yeah.
I just don't understand why even Marvel kept going through. Even DC, had they stopped after Batman vs. Superman, right? Or, any of their movies, they wouldn't have had the extra on the back end, like your Aquamans that were successful, and Shazam, and Wonder Woman 2 that's going to come. I just don't get stopping Star Trek.
I agree with you. I don't know if there's more behind the scenes that maybe we're unfamiliar with at this time that kind of caused them to halt production on it. But I'm in complete agreement with you. I think the first two movies were generally well received. I mean, especially that second one. You've got Benedict Cumberbatch as Khan.
Yes.
You mentioned Simon Pegg's in the cast, Chris Pine, Zachary Quinto, Zoe Saldana. You've got, who else? I'm drawing a blank. Carl Urban.
Yep.
As Bones, who I think in terms of channeling the original character of Bones while still kind of making it yourself, he does a great job. Your own role, your own performance, does such a great job there. I don't know. I would love to see another installment in it, actually. I need to see the third one still, just to catch up on it.
Of course. But again, I just don't understand if they're going to let this third one, the fact that it dipped a little bit, completely stop it. It's kind of like the Terminator series. I love Terminators, but every time they have a bad one, they kind of dip and then they stop and reboot it and stop and reboot it. And the problem with that is you can't ever get the franchise back off the ground.
Yeah.
So, anyways, digressing. I want you to go in on Stranger Things now.
Oh, man. Okay, there's so much I want to talk about, but I actually will try to keep it spoiler-free, and as such, I might not end up saying a whole lot here. But I actually just have the last episode left, so I've watched the first 7 episodes. I've got episode 8 waiting for me, which is, I'm just super anxious to get to it. But it's been fantastic. I've really enjoyed this season. Might be my favorite of the 3 seasons so far. What I will say kind of caught me off guard, even though I heard from the actors and producers, directors, whomever, prior to the release, is that it's a lot darker. So there's a lot more in terms of the horror elements. They lean into that. There's more body horror, I would say, in addition to just kind of grotesque imagery overall. Language is stronger. The stakes are bigger. There's definitely some changes that obviously reflect as the characters themselves are getting older too, right? So they're dealing with different situations that they haven't had to previously. That's just part of growing up, as opposed to the Upside Down and the Demogorgon and things like that you get from the earlier seasons. So it does a phenomenal job, I think, of bringing together these characters again, and some of the performances are outstanding. The actress who portrays Nancy is probably my favorite character from this particular season.
Is Nancy the sister of the main character?
Yes, yep. Nancy's the sister. But overall, of course, you've got Steve, which is a fan favorite character. He's fantastic, and it's actually Ethan Hawke's daughter who stars opposite that actor who plays Steve. So they have a lot of interaction together, which is some of the highlights so far for me as well. The interaction between those two characters especially has been really, really good. So I'm excited to finish it out. I've kind of been having this carrot dangling in front of me because I haven't watched the 8th episode yet.
And of course I had to make him do homework tonight, so he had to come to record.
I do have to say, so now granted this is also me pushing off watching it, but as I was sitting there watching the Bourne Supremacy last night, I was like, oh God. Episode 8 of Stranger Things is waiting for me, and I'm not watching it right now.
But
no, I'm glad I watched the Bourne Supremacy, which we'll get to here in just a moment. But also The Witcher, which I just wanted to mention briefly, because I don't think you guys... did you touch on it?
We did with the new stills. And I know that Nate played it, but I know that you're more excited. I don't know if you're more excited than Nate is. He doesn't get excited about a whole lot until it's been out for 20 years. It's kind of like his video games. But I just you really are excited about it. So
I am.
I never played the game, so I'm not. I'll probably watch it at some point if it makes my list, but I don't know.
Nope.
not too pumped for it. So
fair enough. I am on the opposite side of that. I'm
Yeah.
very excited for it, and I want people to go into it being really open-minded. The nice part about the video game being so popular has actually turned into a double-edged sword. So I think the success of the video game, being one of the best-selling games of all time to my knowledge, and how well it was received both by its fan base and critically, created such an interest in The Witcher overall, which is fantastic. I'm so excited for that.
Okay.
But now going into this version with Henry Cavill, people are expecting The Witcher from the video games.
Okay.
Rightfully so, if that's all they've been exposed to. But they've made it very clear they're pulling from the books as their primary source material. So they're kind of sidelining the games. The games have gone off and done their own thing, and power to them. They've been great games. But so in that still, where you see Henry Cavill, he's only got the one sword on his back. That's from the books. Geralt doesn't carry two swords, for example, in the books. He keeps one on Roach, his horse, his silver sword, because he uses it very infrequently in the books. Whereas his steel sword, that's his primary weapon. He carries that with him on his back most of the time. But the silver sword, not usually carried in the book at the same time.
Okay.
So, there's little things like that where people kind of like, well, he's not carrying both swords.
Right.
I get why that's confusing, but they're pulling from the book. So just go into it with open mind, people. I'm excited for it. I know that people have talked about how Henry Cavill is so huge, whereas Geralt's kind of lean. I mean, the book Geralt doesn't have an ounce of fat on him, I don't think, but he's kind of wiry strength, I would say, rather than Henry Cavill, who's built like a Mack truck. So
huge.
Dude's huge. So I understand that, but I'm looking forward to it. I think the actresses they've got for Ciri and Yennefer, I think that'll be really exciting to see all these roles come together, and I'm very much looking forward to it. Netflix might have a winner with that one.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Nothing like watching, I was on Mission Impossible 6, Fallout, nothing like watching Henry Cavill getting a fist fight with Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
Just how big the differences are.
The infamous arm reload, as they call it, we're in that
that's a
fight scene.
Rewatching that fight scene, really good.
Nice.
Because this guy is just basically beating the crap out of both him and Tom Cruise. It's a really good fight scene. Underrated. Okay, so let's get to the Bourne Supremacy. That's why we're here. Sorry we took up probably more than you guys wanted to on the pop culture, but Joe and I had to catch up. So Bourne Supremacy, that is the sequel to the Bourne Identity, and we're going to get your thoughts on the Bourne Identity here in a second as well.
Yeah.
So brief synopsis on the Bourne Supremacy. Jason Bourne and Marie pick up. I don't remember which country they're in. Are they in Malaysia?
India.
India. Oh, okay, you're right. It is in India. And basically, they're just kind of trying to hide out, stay off the grid, pull their best John Connor impersonation. Basically, back in Europe, new addition, Joan Allen, based by Pamela Landy. She's basically trying to run an operation to get a set of information called the Nevsky File. And this is about a former Russian politician who was basically murdered by Jason Bourne. It was his first kill off the books.
Right, yeah, that's
and during this entire operation, Carl Urban, who shows up, and he is the assassin, the opposite of Jason Bourne in this movie that's going to try to chase him down, kills two of Joan Allen's basically counterparts, or her agents, and they plant a Jason Bourne thumbprint. And then Carl Urban basically gets hired to basically track down Jason Bourne and kill him. Spoiler alert, takes out Marie. With Marie dead, Jason Bourne basically goes on a revenge tour, basically tracking down everybody until he can find out exactly, kind of ends up really going through everybody. Not really through the CIA yet, but you find out there's been some moles, there's been some people that have been on the other side.
That's right.
And he ends up basically having this relationship with Pamela Landy, not a relationship, but this understanding, and she lets him know his real name, David Webb. So, I like this movie. This is my favorite Jason Bourne.
Okay.
And I say that with, and I said that last week. This was always my favorite. I'll be interested because I've not rewatched the Bourne Ultimatum in a while, and I know it's really good. So I'll be really interested to see if that actually ends up retaking that spot. But right now, I still think this was the best before I watched it. I still think it's the best after I watch it. But before we get to it, I want your thoughts on the Bourne Identity.
Yeah. So this was the first time I'd actually sat down to watch this movie from start to finish. And I'll say first and foremost that I really did enjoy it. I thought it was a great movie. It had me hooked from the very beginning, too. And one thing that I found really interesting was that it kind of took that amnesia trope and made me care about it.
Okay.
Which I think that can be tricky to do sometimes, because sometimes these plot devices feel very familiar or recycled in a way, whereas this was really cool how they did this. I like that rescue at the beginning when he's pulled onto the ship.
Yep.
And he's trying to kind of figure out who he is from the outset, and then he just has to get off the ship eventually and try and figure everything out from there.
Yeah.
So Matt Damon's performance, thought was great. Supporting cast across the board was pretty great as well. Shout out to Walton Goggins.
Yes, Gogginologist. I was excited
Goggins was in there.
I was going to ask you about this. Should have had a bigger role.
Yeah, I agree. And that's got to be, I mean, did you look into his filmography? What did he have around this time? Was it anything, or was it justified his big break once he got
Well,
to
he
there?
was in The Shield. And The Shield, I think The Shield either is starting around this time or is going to start very quickly.
Gotcha.
And The Shield was where he gets his break. And then obviously Justified, he really takes off.
Definitely.
I would have loved for Goggins to be the assassin because he's so good.
Man, that would have been really cool.
We need a name for that, like Gogginologist, Gogginites, Gogginistas, whatever we need to be.
Yeah.
Because that's what I am.
I agree. Something else, and this kind of ties into that first category we typically talk about when we review movies, just first thoughts about this movie as well. But in regard to both of them collectively, they're definitely more of a thriller than I realized.
Okay.
Which I appreciate. That's a good thing. That's not a criticism. That's a good thing. I went into it expecting, because the conversations now lead to the John Wick versus Jason Bourne,
yes.
I was expecting more action than what I got. But that's totally cool. I liked the thriller elements and kind of the political intrigue aspect of it, rather than just a straight-up shoot-'em-up action movie. So I appreciated those elements.
Did you have thoughts on Clive Owen being a member of Treadstone as the assassin?
Yeah, I thought he did a really good job, too. I liked,
really
especially, probably my favorite scene was the, I don't really call it a shootout per se, but when he's tracking Clive Owen kind of through the countryside, and he shoots the tanks to make the distraction at the house, and then he's trying to track him down. Keeping in mind, Matt Damon has a double-barrel shotgun versus Clive Owen, who has a sniper rifle. Yes. So I think that was a great moment, too, to show how Jason Bourne is able to think on his feet and really adapt to those situations. So just across the board, yes. Really enjoyed it. Made me very excited to start watching the second one as well. Good. So I didn't end up watching it immediately afterward, but it did make me want to keep going from there. Yeah.
Okay. So let's skip ahead then to we'll just get into Bourne Supremacy then. So my first thoughts on rewatching this movie, again, it was my favorite. I really like it. I think I like it because you don't really get Jason Bourne unleashed in the first movie. You really get Jason Bourne unleashed in the second movie. Yeah. And you really get to see when he wants to accomplish something, he can accomplish it. And even with the world watching him, like I think my favorite part of the movie, and it's going to be my favorite scene, so I'll get to that now. Sure. He gets himself caught by the embassy just so he can knock the guy out, take his phone, or basically copy his phone, so he can listen on the phone call. That's the entire thing. He basically goes to an embassy, risks himself getting caught, just to take out the CIA agent to copy his phone. That's how confident he was. That's how much skill he has. And I love that he's using his environment, right? Takes the keys, looks for the car, puts on the license plate, right? Uses his environment. Really enjoyed that. I really liked Carl Urban as the villain. He might be... I like him better as an assassin than Clive Owen. He's a little bit... Because Clive Owen, as a representative of the U.S. government, he's a little bit neutered. Okay? Yeah. Carl Urban is a Russian... I couldn't tell if he's really a Russian special forces or Secret Service agent, or if that was just a cover on his. But really, he's a Russian assassin. Yeah. He's got no leash. And he plays that way. So I really liked his character better. I'm really interested to get back to the third guy. I think it's Edgar Ramirez is the villain in the third movie. Okay. So I'm really interested to compare those two. But Carl Urban, I think, is the better nemesis. Nice. And really, I briefly mentioned her last... I shouldn't say mentioned her. I talked, actually, I think, pretty well of her. I think Joan Allen's addition as Pamela Landy is great. She's an extremely strong female character. There will be a strong female character up through Bourne Ultimatum. So I really like her character. She's a great counterpunch to Jason Bourne. Yeah. A great counterpunch to people like Brian Cox. I really like her. And that's my initial thoughts. Good movie. And I'm not glad Marie gets killed. I'm okay with Marie getting killed because, again, unleashes Bourne. I'm sure it's one of those things where you always have that trope in these types of movies, these thrillers, these spy thrillers, action movies, that you can't escape with people, you can't run with people, they'll slow you down. Yeah. And that's kind of what it is. And so he basically gets essentially slowed down by Marie, and when Marie's no longer, I don't want to call her a burden, because again, she's not a burden, but it brings something more to his story when she's eliminated, because you get him untethered. And I really enjoyed that part of Jason Bourne Supremacy.
Yeah, so, and I think watching these so close together, that is an interesting point to bring up. Because in that first one, she's the only real connection that he's made after he has amnesia, so he can't remember anything else. So she's that only real connection that he has anymore.
Yeah.
And so dovetailing that into this movie. Now, I did actually know ahead of time that she gets killed. I didn't realize it was Carl Urban who kills her. Just these fragments that I knew about these movies. So I knew that was coming at some point. But I can't imagine being in the place of watching this for the first time without knowing that was coming. Right. That would probably be pretty shocking, I would think. Because she does survive the first movie. And then leading into this movie, she's meant so much up to this point to Jason Bourne. So
you think, and it's one of those things where you think they got away.
Yeah,
like he's sniping her. He's not shooting at her point blank. He has a rifle he has to hit her with.
Yeah.
So I agree. It was definitely shocking in the movie when it took place.
Yeah.
So So casting changes again. They really only had 2 people: Carl Urban, Joan Allen.
Right.
Okay. Thoughts on both those people joining the cast?
I'm very supportive of that. I agree. I think Joan Allen made a great addition.
Yes.
I really like how she was the one who's spearheading the investigation.
Yes, agreed.
But also is keeping an open mind to all possible angles.
Yes.
Because initially she starts like, we've got to figure out who this Jason Bourne guy is, but she also realizes right away that not everything is how it seems.
Yeah.
Like she's keeping an open mind throughout everything, and obviously Ward is a foil to her throughout this too. So that interaction between them at the end is pretty intense there as well when she kind of encounters him in the hotel room there where they have that final exchange. But so I thought her addition as a character and just as an actress was really good. And Carl Urban, come on, I love Carl Urban. So seeing him in that role, especially as a villain, because he can be a really intimidating guy.
Yeah.
The only thing I think I'd seen him as a villain in before this was the Chronicles of Riddick. Actually, so usually he's a hero of some kind, Bones or Éomer from the Lord of the Rings and stuff like that.
Part villain in Thor Ragnarok.
Oh, that's true. Yes, I really enjoyed his character in Thor Ragnarok as well.
Part villain.
Yeah.
I think with the Joan Allen character too, what I really like about Pamela Landy's character is she doesn't know about Treadstone.
Correct.
I like that Treadstone is hidden. And granted, one of the I forgot to say the second thing I was wrong on was I called it Black Briar. I meant Black Brian. That's the name of this of the organization.
Gotcha.
So I was, again, wrong on that. Nate did not correct that. But she doesn't know what it is. And she's trying to uncover what that is. All she has is the fingerprint of Bourne that was left by Carl Urban's character.
Mm-hmm.
So, I like that. Carl Urban's really, really good. How about, so this, not really casting changes, but still directed Paul Greengrass. He directs this one. He directs Bourne Ultimatum. He also directs Jason Bourne, which is the 4th one that's not, it's still Matt Damon, but it's outside the trilogy.
Okay.
United 93, Captain Phillips. So he's got a pretty nice resume there.
Yeah.
Tony Gilroy, written by him still. He wrote all the Jason Bourne movies. He also did Armageddon, like we talked about. Green Zone, which was a Jason Bourne knockoff, wannabe, not Jason Bourne movie. Michael Clayton, and of course Rogue One, which we are both big fans of.
Yes.
This had a budget of $75 million, which was more than the budget of the $60 million from the previous one. But this one did $288 million.
Nice.
This one outperformed the first one. So, pretty successful. I do think most people will critically say that it's actually the low point of the series, though. Just your thoughts between the first movie and second movie. Do you have a preference on which movie you prefer?
Yeah, with where I'm sitting at right now, I actually am leaning toward the first, I would say.
Fair.
Especially just from how things caught my attention right from the outset. And back to the amnesia comments that I mentioned, I think it's really cool to see his character start to piece things together, but also it leads to more questions in a way. So when he walks into the diner with Marie and he starts talking about how I can tell you, the license plate numbers from all 6 vehicles, and he starts telling everything that he can observe, but he doesn't know why he can observe it. So those kinds of moments from the first one, and then also how pure muscle memory it seems like he's able to react in certain situations because of his training. He's like, oh my gosh, who was that kind of thing going on? So yeah, I really enjoyed the first one. I really enjoyed the second one as well. But at this point, without having seen any of the others, I'll give it to the first.
Fair enough.
Worth noting, to remind everyone, the only Bourne-related movie I had seen, oddly enough, was with Jeremy Renner. I have seen that one in its entirety when it was in theaters, actually.
I tried to rewatch that this weekend and I couldn't get through it. I need to revisit it. Didn't realize Oscar Isaac is in the very beginning of that movie.
Is he really?
Yeah.
It's been a long time since I've seen it, so I did not recall that.
I'm trying to think of what the guy's name is. I don't know what Jeremy Renner's character's name in that movie is. I don't remember what it is. But he goes to this shack out in the mountains at the very beginning as he's training. And the guy that's living in the shack already is Oscar Isaac. Which, tons of movies that he's in, that you just don't pay any attention to who he was.
Yeah, he just kind of pop up and stuff.
Yeah,
randomly.
I see him and I'm like, oh my God, he's in this. And again, this is all 100% pre, Star Wars.
Yeah, that's right.
Never had any idea of who he was pre-Star Wars. Wouldn't have been able to pick him out of a crowd. Now he's in so many things. I didn't realize he was Apocalypse in the X-Men movie. That's what I'm saying.
Right. Yeah,
I didn't
Apocalypse
that.
as well. Yeah.
So it's one of those things where he just flew under the radar to me, at least.
Now, just really quickly, sorry, for my
ahead.
own timeline in my mind, the Jeremy Renner movie takes place alongside the third Bourne movie?
Simultaneously.
Okay, all right, gotcha. Just
You'll see scenes that they pulled into the Bourne legacy from the Bourne Ultimatum.
Nice.
So, yeah, there's a part where they basically shoot a dude in the head that's a reporter as he's coming out of Waterloo Station. That's from Bourne Ultimatum. There's a scene where you see Jason Bourne. They're like, yep, he's in New York. That's supposed to take place at the same time.
Okay,
so,
cool.
Now, the one thing about these movies is that they're not really quotable. So, I'll come back to best scene in a second. Do you have any quotes that you liked?
I do. I picked one here just because it kind of made me chuckle. Now, the guy who delivers it is a total jerk because it's coming from Ward Abbott, Brian Cox's character, but does contain some mild, strong language, if I may quote verbatim here.
Sure.
But so it's when she's first investigating this, and I think they're in the interrogation room. Well, I don't know if it's a true interrogation room, but I digress. There's microphones in front of them. But he tells her, "You're in a big puddle of shit, Pamela, and you don't have the shoes for it." I don't know. That just kind of stood out to me of just, a way of saying you're in over your head kind of deal. But
yep, that's a good one.
Yeah, but you're right. Other than that, there's some kind of cool moments, some cool dialogue exchanges, but nothing that jumped out to me dramatically so for a quote. Did you say you got anything for that?
I don't really have a quote. I don't. It's not so much quotable as I just like the scenes where what he says works. And I think my favorite scene, the one that's most memorable as far as him talking, is he gets the sniper rifle, he perches up outside of their conference room where they're basically holding a meeting, and he makes the phone call to engage the conversation with Pamela Landy directly. And what he does is he sees Nikki, Julia Stiles' character, in the window.
Yeah.
And he basically says, go get her. She was in Treadstone. I want to speak to her. And Pamela's like, what if I can't find her? And he goes, she's standing right next to you. And it's kind of interesting because at the end of the movie, he'll tell her to get some sleep because she looks tired. And like I said, not quotable. I thought the first one had some better dialogue than this particular movie. Because the one thing I really liked about the first one was you actually had some good dialogue between Jason Bourne and Clive Owen as the two assassins. You don't get that with Carl Urban's character.
You don't.
And you don't get that really until, again, the third one with Edgar Ramirez, where they kind of have a similar conversation, only it's reversed between, instead of Jason Bourne, instead of Clive Owen having that conversation with Jason Bourne, it's Jason Bourne trying to have that conversation with Edgar Ramirez. Mm-hmm. So that's what I like. Not as much to quote on. Do you have a favorite scene?
Yeah, I do have a favorite scene. It was right at the end, the car chase.
Okay.
Between Carl Urban and Jason Bourne. Just saying Carl. I don't remember his character's name. Carl Urban and Jason Bourne.
Kirill? Maybe.
I can double check real quick.
Yeah, go ahead and look that up. But
you're right. Kirill.
I will say that this series does have underrated car chase scenes.
And it goes forever.
Yes.
I can't imagine trying to film a sequence like that.
Yeah.
To go the distance that is traveled.
Yeah.
And then culminating in both of them exchanging shots while trying to drive, and then eventually the cars get flipped and he rams Carl Urban's SUV into the pole or whatever, into the divider. Man, that scene was intense, and I really enjoyed it. I'm a big fan of car chases. Probably no surprise. People have been listening a while. That's why Mad Max is pretty much my favorite series of all time.
We'll cover that
So,
sometime.
perfect. But car chases, I love them. So, this one in particular really kind of stood out to me. Yeah.
What were your thoughts on? It doesn't have to be your favorite scene. I'm interested in your thoughts on the first real fight he has with these. Essentially, it would have been the held over assassin from Treadstone, right? I'm assuming he's the guy that actually kills Conklin from the first movie. They just recasted his character and put him in this movie. Yeah, that's the only catch-all I can get. That he's the last remaining assassin.
Fair enough.
Could not. Maybe it's not. Maybe he kills all the rest of them off camera. But this particular guy is the last remaining person of Treadstone besides Jason Bourne. He goes to his house. He handcuffs him. They have the fight. The knife fight versus the magazine.
Yes.
Thoughts on that?
That scene was really cool. And we've referenced already how Jason Bourne adapts to his environment and uses his environment to his advantage. And I love how he sees him going for the knife and he picks up the closest thing he could find that's going to help him. And it's the magazine. And that's cool. I can't say I've seen anything quite like that before in another movie where it's a magazine versus a knife.
Yeah.
So,
do you prefer that fight or the fight in the first one where the guy comes through the French apartment and he does it with a pen?
That.
Okay.
I prefer the fight scene from the first one, actually.
You're going to love the one in the third movie where he does it with a book.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So it's kind of like a John Wick thing, right? He's the first guy to do a pen, first guy to do the book.
Right.
So it makes sense. I think that's, I like the scene that you chose too. I think that's good. How about any advice, item, gift you'd give to a character?
Oddly enough, I kind of struggled with this one, and the only thing I could think of, which it's more advice than an item, and I'm not rooting for Karl Urban's character by any means, but it's when he goes up to the wreckage of the car. Well, he doesn't even really see the wreckage, which is kind of my point.
Yes.
The car had driven off the bridge into the water, and he kind of goes over and, all right, yeah, that looks good. And then he leaves.
I can't help but think your Karl Urban impersonation just had a little Scottish tint go to it. I can't help but think that.
Oh, but it just baffled me. I mean, clearly this guy knows what he's doing, and he shows that he knows what he's doing at all other moments in this movie, and he has to know what Jason Bourne is capable of, I'm assuming. And so the fact that he doesn't even confirm the fact that he actually got Jason Bourne. I guess in terms of my advice, it would be, hey, how about you stick around and try and search the area yourself before just assuming that he left. Now, obviously, the reason why I bring this up as well is because I thought it would have been really cool to see, and maybe we get this in later movies that I'm unaware of as of yet, but where we see someone also more of as an equal of Jason Bourne. We kind of get that Clive Owen a little bit too, right? But I'd love to see Karl Urban know that he doesn't have sight confirming this, so it gets into this little cat and mouse deal where it's Jason Bourne having to avoid him again after this sequence, and then Karl Urban finally does leave where he's like, okay, I haven't been able to find him.
I haven't seen the Bourne Ultimatum in a while, but I'm thinking the only person that really has a good, how should I say, equal playing field with him is the movie Jason Bourne. So it's in the same storyline, but it's in the fourth. Technically, it's the fourth movie, so it's not the trilogy.
Oh, that's right. And that didn't come out until 2016, is that right?
Yeah.
When that one came out?
Yeah, and so I'm trying to think of what's the guy's name? What is it? Vincent Castle. He played the villain in Ocean's 12. He played the thief that they went up against.
Okay.
So he kind of plays an assassin with a vendetta against Jason Bourne.
Gotcha.
And that is the guy that I feel like is the most on his level. Although Edgar Ramirez, he does pretty good. He's not bad. He's legit. It just goes to show you though that even like Treadstone, Clive Owen, he dismantled Treadstone. He took out all of them. And he was just that much better than everybody.
Right. Yeah.
I think my piece of advice would be maybe Brian Cox doesn't have to kill his buddy. Like he kills his assistant. And he stabs him in a way because the guy says, well, this isn't all wrong. I don't think Jason Bourne would need to do this. He would know he doesn't need to do this. I think he preemptively kills this guy. I don't think that anything that would have done would have traced it back to him on that particular situation.
I agree.
So I don't know. Maybe just hold off a little bit longer, see where you're at, instead of just going from 0 to 60, killing your assistant, and then basically omitting everything on recorder.
Yeah.
And I just don't think I think he could have played dumb. I don't think he needed to record. I think he could have held out. I think by that time, I don't understand why they can't consider Jason Bourne, like they don't know that he's not going to kill people. They've had multiple times where he doesn't kill Nikki. He doesn't seem to kill people that aren't trying to actively kill him.
Yeah.
So I don't know why he's afraid of him at that moment. I don't understand why his character gives in so quickly to admitting to everything. So my advice to him would be hold out. Don't panic. But I could be wrong. Maybe they're going to connect him to the Nesky murder. I don't know. Most cowboyish scene?
Most cowboyish scene is actually one that you had also mentioned earlier, the interrogation scene. Mm-hmm. At the very beginning, toward the beginning, I should say. Yeah, just the lightning quick reflexes.
Yes.
And Jason Bourne has this on lock from the get-go in this scene. And it's a blink and you'll miss it moment. The agent on the phone gets that phone call, hangs it up, and starts to turn with the gun.
Yep.
And Jason's just all over him at that point, and knocks the other guard out too. There's another guard in the room.
And I love that too, because as the guy's walking into the interrogation room, he's on the phone. He's like, let's take a quick something popped on the system. I just got to talk to this guy. And he's basically trying to question him. He realizes he's not speaking. He's speaking in another language that he doesn't probably realize. Jason Bourne probably knows exactly what he's saying. He takes the phone call from Pamela Landy, which is what Jason wants him to do. Obviously knocks him out. The best part, though, too, is once the guy comes to, he's groggy, and he's having that conversation. He doesn't realize that the door is being blockaded from the other side. He's trying to open it. He's obviously disheveled. He's like, yes, sir, ma'am. And Pamela Landy's like, if you want to stick with the CIA, take care of this. So, that is a really good scene. I do think I think that's very ballsy. I also think, obviously, perching up next to basically the CIA headquarters substation with a sniper rifle and then not shooting anybody, pretty ballsy as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think too another. It's not a cowboyish scene. It's just a really funny scene because you don't see this very often. Just the fact that he goes to the payphone bank and he just starts calling hotels. Just asking for Pamela Landy and until he finally gets and he just knows where to go.
Exactly.
That's stuff that I feel like this movie or this series does better than any other action series. That they use. How does he gather intelligence, and how does he utilize his intelligence as far as his surroundings to achieve his objective? And I think that there's a great part where in the third movie you'll see he's running from rooftop to rooftop, and on the edges of the roofs are glass, and, so people can't get up there and go from roof to roof. So what he does is he wraps his hands with cloths that he finds, and he just starts jumping. It's just again environmentally very very sound. Mm-hmm. How about what doesn't age well in this movie?
Yeah, so this is actually really one of my few true criticisms. I am not a fan of the shaky camera.
Okay.
So that will probably pop up multiple times, but I like action sequences, especially where you can see exactly what's going on.
Yeah, they do it a lot in the first fight. Yeah. The dark and the window and the shades and they offset with the color.
Right.
Exactly what you're talking about.
So I know it is artistic in a way, and it certainly conveys the chaos of that moment, which I have to imagine is what they're going for.
Yeah.
Is that in that moment they're kind of trying to make you feel like what he would be experiencing in a way. But it's kind of disorienting, and I like watching very well choreographed fights just kind of panned a little bit wider, so you can see all the thought and the attention to detail in the fight sequence.
Okay.
So for me, now watching, fast forward to where we are now, some of the single take fight sequences that we get, more on this later, John Wick versus Jason Bourne when we get to that, but when you get these single take fight sequences, it's just, that type of camera work doesn't hold up well for me.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
What you got?
I honestly don't really like the fact that he went to Nesky's daughter at the end.
Okay.
I don't like the idea that he would go and basically say, I murdered your family. I don't know if that... it doesn't want to say it doesn't age well as in people can nitpick it. I'm just... Maybe he shouldn't do that? Yeah. She was a little child at the time that he murders her family. And she's obviously... We don't know how old she is. College, high school, whatever. Probably college or older.
Probably college.
She's living on her own, it looks like.
Yeah, exactly.
The idea that he would basically break into her house with a gun out, he puts it away, thankfully, to scare her. Not scare her. But the fact that he would basically just say, hey, I would want to know, and I get it. He goes, I would want to know that my mother didn't kill my father and shoot herself. But the fact that he's like, yep, I killed them, and he just walks away, or limps away, basically. I don't know. I don't know if that as a character trait would age well. If he needs to bring that up to her,
that's a good point.
I don't want to say she's gotten over it, but she's probably living her life the best she can without her parents. And I don't think that type of bombshell needs to land on this lady right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that we approach this scene obviously from Jason Bourne's perspective.
Yes.
But to put ourselves in the shoes of that
Yeah.
girl, like, here's this complete stranger who's
Yep.
bloody, who has
Yep.
a gun,
Yep.
breaks into your apartment, and then tells you, hey, this might be good news depending on your point of view.
Yeah.
Your parents didn't kill each other. I murdered
Yeah.
them.
Your
Like,
mother. Hey, your mother wasn't supposed to be there. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I agree with you. That doesn't really come across too well in the slightest.
No, and it's one of those things where we talk about what can redeem a character sometimes, and obviously we want to like Jason Bourne because he doesn't want to do this anymore. And to be fair, we can make the argument he's not, he's an assassin for the U.S. government. Maybe he's arguably a good guy in that sense. He's not like he's an assassin for money. He's not just killing people of any kind. He's essentially killing people for the interest of the safety, we assume, except for this particular incident, which clearly was off the books, but he clearly doesn't know any better. As you'll see more into like his brainwashing a little bit and the psychology of how they break these guys in the third movie.
Is that the third one?
Yeah.
Okay, so that probably also answers questions I had at the time with that Jeremy Renner
Yes.
spin-off
Yeah.
movie
So,
there too.
no like chemical pills, but just like psychologically breaking down.
Gotcha.
And Albert Finney, who I don't remember the doctor's name, but he shows up in the third one and he's excellent. Scott Glenn is in the third one. He's really good too. I don't know. Disappointed that Jason Bourne would disrupt that lady's life because I don't think she needs that. I don't think she wants that. What are your thoughts on Julia Stiles in this? In the first one and in this one.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought this up.
Nate and I had strong opinions on this.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool to see her in a role like this, actually, especially in the first one. So I'm really trying to remember anything else I'd seen her in.
Save the Last Dance.
Yeah, like 10 Things I Hate About You.
Yeah, but that came after this, I think.
Did that come after this?
You keep talking. I'll look that up.
But anyway, point being, regardless of when it was released, I'll take a step back and preface my comments with that. Regardless of when any of these movies came out, all I had seen her in was kind of romantic comedy kind of movies. So to see her outside of that playing this particular role, I thought was really...
Sorry, you're right. 10 Things I Hate About You comes like in 99.
99. Okay,
Yes.
Gotcha. Yeah. No, that's fine. So anyway, that's more or less my point. I thought it was cool to see her in a role like this, and I think she's a good actress as well. I thought she did, especially, it's a horrible thing that's happening to her character when Jason Bourne kidnaps her, basically.
Yeah.
Just trying to get information from her. But I buy that scene. I think she's a good actress at conveying what she needs to convey for those scenes.
I would say her character gets better in the third movie.
Okay.
And her character plays a pretty prominent role in the fourth movie. But I don't know. So much... Again, in the first movie, she's a conduit of information from Treadstone to the assassins, which she doesn't need to be because they do it by phone anyways, right? Up to and including her handing Clive Owen a message at the carnival. There's not really a lot she does, okay? She's also not really a strong female character.
I agree with that.
And that's why, and I say that because I'm comparing her to the other two females of Marie and Pamela Landy, who are very strong characters in these films. Mm-hmm. And as Nate says, it is kind of star power for the sake of star power, and you don't really need her because she, as Julia Stiles, isn't bringing anything to Nikki's character.
Okay, fair enough. So let me clarify. Did you guys have problems with like Julia Stiles, or the fact that her character was there to begin with? Because that's a different way I'm viewing this right now. Julia Stiles, I think, does a great job in that role.
Okay.
I would probably agree that role could have been different, or maybe not even needed necessarily.
So that's the thing. I don't think the role is needed.
Okay,
I think they're trying to make a character out of somebody that's a female, which is fine, especially because they eliminate Marie. So you have to have some form of a counterpart. Which again, that's why I argued that Joan Allen's character becomes so important because she's so she's an aggressive character in a different way. Like, he's physically aggressive and she's verbally aggressive because she doesn't put up with the superiors of herself, and she gets really good in the third movie.
Nice.
With like this whoever I don't remember the actor. Obviously, we'll get to him next week. But man, she does some good verbal sparring with that guy. But that's what I'm saying. Her character doesn't provide anything. She's an information conduit, which we already have as an audience. We don't need. Mm-hmm. I see that guy from the moped is getting his message to relocate, prep, and move. I don't know what she's doing. Mm-hmm. I don't know. They just show her monitoring a radio frequency.
Yeah, and
So again, I just don't think she's needed. And if her character is needed, I don't think Julia Stiles needs to play that character.
Okay, I get where you're coming from. I think that in the first one, that role in and of itself could probably have been handled in a different way or be non-existent. But however, by the second one, I would say that it's important for Jason Bourne's character.
Okay.
Because it's kind of a moment in which he almost snaps. Like, it shows a very dark side to him when he locks her in that room. That's pretty freaking scary. So up until that point, you've seen him obviously completely just throw down with people, and you know how violent he could be.
Yes.
And you've seen him kind of get to a breaking point with threatening people before. But I guess my point is that with Julia Stiles' character is that she is purely on the informational side of things, and he's, scaring the bejesus out of her to show how serious he is in trying to get this information.
Yes.
So, unfortunately, just as you mentioned, no, that is not a very strong character.
Yes.
But in terms of development for Jason Bourne, maybe there's something there.
And again, I acknowledge in the third movie, which you have not seen yet,
right,
she has a much more prominent role to play.
Cool.
And in the fourth movie, an even more prominent role to play. So we'll see how that goes with her character in the Bourne Ultimatum.
Yeah, I'll revisit it. I'll keep that in mind as I watch it.
That's right. Who do you think wins this movie?
Oh, Matt Damon and Jason Bourne.
Yeah, I agree. Because, up until even the Bourne Identity, we argued that, you don't think of Jason Bourne as an action movie or action star.
Right.
Post Bourne trilogy, he's arguably the biggest action star. And I agree, nobody's going to win these movies but Jason Bourne.
Yeah,
he's going to win all of these.
For sure. I can see that happening in the movies to follow.
So we had this conversation. So two things to get to before we get to Bourne versus Wick, which I'm excited for. Treadstone's introduction in the first movie has a lot of different assassins living in different cities.
That's right.
Okay. We do know that there obviously are international, ties with people like Nevsky, Kirill. There's going to be psychological aspects to it. That Treadstone was only a small component of Black Brian, which is a bigger umbrella, Black on Black's operation, which we get heavily into in the third movie. There's a world to build. And my question is, reboot, sequel, TV show.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pointing out the elephant in the room, we know that sequels happen.
Yep.
After this, but I really do like seeing Matt Damon in this role.
Yes.
So I would say continue with sequels is actually what I would say. I'm really anxious to see that most recent one that released in 2016. Obviously, I'll watch the next Bourne movie prior to that, but I think that's really interesting. If it's kind of a one-off story, is that right? Like kind of a, I don't want to say a spin-off because it's Jason Bourne still. It's Matt Damon as Jason Bourne.
Yeah, and yes and no. A lot more goes into how he becomes Jason Bourne in the fourth one. Okay,
I gotcha.
But that had a budget of $490 million. So we're going from $75 million in the second one to $490 million in the Bourne.
Is that what it made, or that was? I can't be. Its
apologize. No, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to clarify.
That was the total.
Total. Okay.
So this one had a budget of $120 million.
Okay, gotcha.
And only made $415. So I don't think it was a failure by any chance.
Not at all. I don't.
People were disappointed that Jeremy Renner's character doesn't go into the fourth movie.
Oh, okay.
But
that'd have been cool to bring him back.
Essentially they decided that not wanting to go through it again. So I don't know. I think what was it in March 2017? They asked Matt Damon about it. Basically said could be done with this character Jason Bourne. Doesn't know if it'd work out. So I don't think they've closed the book on Jason Bourne. I think the fact that Matt Damon hasn't really done anything that great, except for like The Martian.
I was going to say he was in The Martian.
Which is good. But he's Jason Bourne.
Yeah.
There's nothing else after Jason Bourne that you're like, yeah, the Ocean's movies, but he's not the best star in that. Obviously Good Will Hunting, but that's pre-Jason Bourne.
Yeah, exactly.
I think Jason Bourne's not really his best acting, but it's probably his most successful that he's done.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know why he wouldn't want to revisit that. And so I don't know if we need another sequel. I don't know if they want to reboot it. What would you think about like a TV series in the world of Treadstone? We can call it Treadstone, and it's, I don't know, this show.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think that could be really interesting. You obviously have the ability to kind of go to different characters that are stationed around the world, really.
Yeah.
Just as you mentioned, because they show those sequences where there's agents everywhere. It seems like they have personnel on the ground everywhere. So I think that could lend itself very well, similar to our John Wick conversation about the Continental, where you'd have these spin-offs with all these other characters that are still part of that organization. So I certainly think it could work well if they chose to do something like that.
Okay. New category that we added tonight. Let's give this a movie ranking. And we're going to decide this.
Yeah.
So we never decided before this podcast. Is our movie ranking going to be a letter grade, A, B, C, D, E, F, or are we going to do a 1 through 10?
I'm a fan of just sticking with the numbers. Let's do numbers. Like a 1 through 10.
Okay.
Grade the movie.
Okay. So what is your grade of The Bourne Identity?
So, the Bourne Identity, I would give that one an 8 out of 10.
Okay.
Really enjoyed it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
How about you?
I'm going to give that one an 8.5.
Okay, cool.
Okay. I do think it's the better film. It's just not my favorite of the two.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I will give it a higher grade than the Bourne Supremacy because the story is better, and that's just also the problem with doing a story of a continuation, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Generally, sequels aren't as good. Again, there are definitely the exception to the rule, but most sequels tend to not be as successful as the main one. So I will give the Bourne Supremacy an 8 because I really like it, but it's just not as good as the Bourne Identity.
Yeah.
So what do you give the Bourne Supremacy?
Fair enough. I also was going to go a little bit lower, so I was going to give it a 7 out of 10.
Okay.
I would say.
All right.
Still enjoyed it. Wasn't, in my mind, quite as good as the first one.
Got it.
But still looking forward to seeing the next movie after that.
I'm excited to see the Bourne Ultimatum 2. Again, I haven't seen it in a while. Really, I remember it being very positive. I think a lot of people that I've spoken to about it do say that is the best of the three. So it'll be nice to compare those. Before we get to the real reason why we're here tonight, Bourne versus Wick with you.
All leads to this.
Yeah. Do you think Nate can do 3 pull-ups?
Do I think Nate can? You know what? I'm going to say yes.
So we
say Nate can do 3 pull-ups.
Yeah, I don't think
Come on,
he can.
buddy. You do it.
I'm talking that he has to go from a hanging position and pull himself up 3 times. And we talked about this last week when you weren't here. And because he was making fun of Jason Bourne and his 3 pull-ups that he does on the boat in the first movie. And my question is, and Matt Damon's in pretty good shape, right?
Yeah.
Nate is not. Sorry, Nate. And I'm speaking from somebody who's also not in great shape myself.
Yeah, me
so
either.
I know for a fact I can't do 3 pull-ups. I don't think Nate can do 3 pull-ups. You think he can?
I'm going to say he can.
Okay.
I'm rooting for you, Nate. Come on.
Here's the thing.
Don't let me down.
Since Nate's not on this episode, you know damn well he's not going to listen to this episode. So we will text him and have him try this. My question is, can you do 3 pull-ups?
Oh, gosh. I can tell you, Garrett, I used to be able to absolutely do at minimum 3 pull-ups, but the last time I
like how you said a minimum.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a minimum 3 pull-up policy.
Specify minimum 3 pull-up policy. Yeah. Gosh, Garrett, I'm pretty hesitant to commit to that, but yes.
I know I can.
I'm going to say yes, I can do 3 pull-ups still.
I honestly think that there might need to be a pull-up contest between you and Nate.
I think it's got to happen at this point.
I don't know what we're going to do, but I want to see this. Because I don't think Nate can do it. Nate swears up and down he can. He's way more confident, though, than you are about it. You're like, yeah, I can.
Yeah, I'm trying to be realistic about it. I know the last time I worked out. It's been a while, guys. So... But at the same time, you know what? If I gotta, get a little. Wait, when are we doing this? If you say like tomorrow.
No. I'm not sure when we're gonna do this. We need to probably do it before we finish up the Bourne trilogy.
Yeah, okay.
So let's
enough.
do it between now and next week.
Next week sometime.
Nate's got a pull-up bar in his garage.
Perfect.
That he's clearly not using. So we're gonna go ahead and put that to use.
Let's make it happen.
Yeah, so we'll get back to that. Let's talk Bourne versus John Wick. Jason Bourne, John Wick.
Yeah.
Now, I put this up on a Twitter poll, and surprisingly, 64% of people picked Jason Bourne would win in a fight over John Wick. So let's break this up a little bit. After seeing the first movie, I want to know, did you think John Wick won or Jason Bourne won as a better movie? And who do you think after the first movie would... And then let's just go and do... Second, John Wick versus Jason Bourne. Second, Supremacy, better movie. Okay. And then, essentially, up till now, who wins in a fight? Jason Bourne, John Wick.
Perfect. Okay, I like that we're making that distinction because my answers will differ then.
Okay.
So, better movie. First Bourne movie.
Okay.
I think overall, just in terms of plot, the twists and turns, pacing, I really, really enjoyed it. Thought the overall storyline was certainly better than a kind of standard revenge plot. Okay? So, taking those 2 things, yes, I will certainly give that to Bourne. In a fight after the first movie, I'm giving that to Wick.
Really?
Yeah, I'm giving that to Wick. Although, I will also say, leading into Bourne Supremacy, that I would, only having seen the first Bourne movie, consider his strengths to be greater in that one than the second. So I'd be edging closer to give it to Bourne based on his performance in the first movie than the second.
Okay, so you picked that Jason Bourne is a better movie than John Wick 1.
Yes.
But that John Wick is going to defeat Jason Bourne in the fight.
Correct.
Okay. But in both movies, then?
Also true. However, do you want me to get to two? You want me to jump
go
ahead?
ahead.
Yeah, okay, so moving into the second movies, I would actually say I enjoyed John Wick 2 as a movie.
I
more so than the second Bourne movie. And I still think John Wick would win.
Okay. Let's debate this. So, I definitely think that John Wick 2 is better than John Wick 1. And I think everybody agrees to that.
Yes, sorry. Also, in that capacity, yes.
Okay.
I find 2 to be better than 1, I would say.
So, let's be fair. John Wick couldn't find Jason Bourne. Do you agree?
Okay, between the two characters, Jason Bourne, in terms of an intelligence perspective, like gaining intel, better than John Wick. Yeah. I'll say that.
So, okay, so let me run a couple scenarios.
I still think he'd be able to find him, though. I will give him that, but I think Jason Bourne would be more proficient at finding John Wick if it was reversed in terms of who's chasing whom.
So, is the Continental located in New York, right?
I believe so.
I'd
have to double check.
Yeah, I think it is. Okay, so Jason Bourne's on the city of New York. What are the chances that you give that Jason Bourne would actually be able to infiltrate the Continental to take out John Wick?
That Jason Bourne would be able to infiltrate the Continental?
Let's say pre-amnesia Jason Bourne. So we're talking like top of the game Jason Bourne, right? He's a not non-functioning $30 million weapon, right? As they said in the first one.
That's right.
Or did I say that wrong? He's not a malfunctioning.
Right. Yeah.
So he's a fully functioning $30 million weapon at that time. So John Wick is going to be tasked. Maybe Jason Bourne is hired to infiltrate the Continental and take out John Wick. Jason Bourne. Can Jason Bourne get into the Continental and kill John Wick?
Oh man. Okay. So the Continental as the grounds of combat. Yes, actually, I'm gonna go with yes. We're working on the self-contained rules within each movie universe. They put a lot of faith, it seems like, in the rules of the Continental. So if you have someone willing to subvert those rules, then yes, I do think you could.
Okay.
He'd be taking the fight to Wick when he doesn't expect it.
Now, John Wick, let's go post-amnesia. Jason Bourne's on the run, off the grid. Do you think John Wick can find him?
Yeah, I do. I'm gonna say he can. Now, I think John Wick would have enough. Once again, if we're kind of merging movie universes, John Wick would have enough resources to be able. He'd know people who know people.
Now, I don't want to say gun versus non-gun because Jason Bourne generally would use a gun, doesn't like to use a gun. John Wick is obviously very deadly. That's also just a different of headshotting, which is something they do a lot in the John Wick trilogy.
Yes.
Let's just do hand-to-hand combat. And to be fair, John Wick does use his surroundings with him. Mm-hmm. Do you believe John Wick defeats Jason Bourne in hand-to-hand combat?
I do. I know that's the hot button one there.
That is a hot take. Man, I get it. Let's be fair. John Wick is clearly going to get hit by a car in any fight scene he goes into because he gets hit by a million cars in all three movies. Which I don't know how he survives. That's the one thing.
Mention that.
That's the one thing I have a problem with and we actually Nate and I rewatched John Wick 2 this last weekend.
Nice.
Sorry, not Nate, a buddy of mine. I have a problem with how many times he gets hit with a car on the side of his leg. I'm okay with him getting stabbed and shot even, but he gets nailed by a car from an angle that his entire leg would just snap. Hip, femur, shin, and knee. Tear every ACL, MCL, whatever you want. He just gets up and walks away. That's the only problem with John Wick I have is these cars that hit him.
Okay. I also had a problem with Jason Bourne for similar situations.
What?
Yeah. So now, no doubt about it, being surrounded and in another vehicle when struck by another vehicle is certainly going to be better, hands down, than being out of a vehicle and being struck by a vehicle. I'll give you that. However, he gets rocked in that second Bourne movie.
Yes.
Just like a ragdoll in that car he's driving.
Yes, but John Wick got hit by 2 consecutive cars in John Wick 2.
Also, wait, there's more. Let's back up to the first Bourne movie. When at the very end, this is the whole movie, I didn't get to provide any criticism on the first Bourne movie, which, once again, still love, but this scene was like, why ruin the integrity of how proficient and cool your character is at the last moment? When he tackles, I believe the guy's already dead, off the balcony.
Yes.
And yes, I get he lands on top of the guy, but
he limps away.
On.
He's not like he walks away unscathed.
Yeah, I get it. And same with, even in the second movie, I mean, he's shot and he does a good job of limping and holding his arm. Like, he's clearly pretty well beaten up at this point. But still, I get your point, where you're coming from with John Wick. I totally agree. He is highly unlikely he'd be able to walk away from being struck multiple times by a car. But those scenes from the Bourne movie stood out to me as well as being kind of ridiculous.
Oh, man. Go ahead.
Also, sorry.
Go ahead.
Hand-to-hand combat, because I know that's kind of what I think this boils down to, right?
Because we can't compare weapons, because John Wick is... Not that he's more... I don't want to argue he's more proficient with the weapon, because when we see Jason Bourne use a weapon, he's pretty proficient.
Right.
One's more likely to carry a weapon than the other one.
Yeah, and we just simply see more of it in John Wick. But if we're talking like peak Jason Bourne, and then peak John Wick, I think they'd probably be pretty evenly matched firearm-wise. But the scene in the second movie with Common and John Wick, that's kind of how I envision a Jason Bourne fight would go. So, I mean, it would be super close.
So you're trying to tell me you think John Wick is going to leave Jason Bourne sitting on a train with a knife in him?
Okay, yeah, I get where it distills down to that. But
the shooting.
The entire sequence, and then where they end up breaking through the glass pane into the Continental. Yeah. It's kind of a standoff at first.
Okay.
That specific part, that's how I see a fight going. I love that fight scene in John Wick 2. I don't want to turn this episode into how much I love John Wick. But that was such a cool fight sequence to see two evenly matched people just gloves off throw down.
We'll do once the third John Wick movie comes out. We've seen it in theaters. I know you haven't seen it yet. Once it comes out to DVD, we'll give it some time, but maybe we'll cover that trilogy this fall sometime.
That'd be cool.
Because we need to cover it. We like it. Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I'm going to go with, I still think Jason Bourne, again, we each have a third movie to watch.
That's true. Yep.
Bourne Ultimatum and obviously John Wick 3 to really catch in here. I'm still going to go with Jason Bourne. I think that he would use something in his environment. I think this would end up in a jiu-jitsu battle on the ground, wrestling, and someone's going to get choked out. Mm-hmm. I think that's essentially how that fight would end. I just think if it stood up, I honestly think that he's better than John Wick on standing up, for sure. I think maybe John Wick has an advantage on the ground, but I think once you throw in what he would use as a weapon in his environment, if they were hand-to-hand, like a cord, anything like that, and a book.
A book,
I know John Wick takes out a guy with a book in the third movie.
Yep.
The way that, I don't know, the Jason Bourne... The way Jason Bourne fights, I think he's a definitive action star. I know that you would argue John Wick probably is.
I would. You are correct.
Yes.
And I think that it is interesting. There are different methodologies behind it. I'm not saying John Wick doesn't plan, but it seems like if I had to choose between the two, who probably has tried to plan so far in advance how things will go that they know the flow of the fight, I'd give that to Jason Bourne.
Yes.
But Keanu Reeves, John Wick, would be able to react very well, I think. So maybe the planning ahead, maybe not as much, but reaction and being able to still adapt in those situations.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
That'd definitely be an interesting...
Do you have anything else to cap this off? I think we were right. I think it was probably 90 minutes later if they wanted to get to this debate.
Yeah, I think that was a pretty good approximation at the outset there. No, I think we can put a bow on that one. So I did enjoying the movie so far, I guess is what I'll say in closing.
We got the Bourne Ultimatum next week. We do enjoy you guys joining us this week. Go out, give us a 5-star rating. Leave us a review on iTunes. You can get us on Spotify, Stitcher, CastBox, wherever you get your podcast downloads, essentially. Email us at aliensandcowboys@gmail.com. Tweet at us. We're at Alien and Cowboy. We do have the Watchmen podcast. If you have not gone out to subscribe, go out and make sure you do that. We haven't put any content really out on that except for Joe's original follow-up of Bob Dylan's Times Are Changing. So that's a really good song. Go out there and catch Joe strumming away with that. we are going to find time to put the Watchmen movie out on that podcast, so we'll obviously let you guys know when we do that. But go out there, subscribe. That's The Watchmen for Nixon. Again, that's on Spotify, iTunes. Leave us a review. That way we can get a following nice and built up for when they do release the show. Other than that, Nate, we're planning hopefully to have all 3 people back next week. This has just been a hiccup the last couple weeks.
Yeah.
But anything else to follow up with?
Nope.
Perfect. We'll see you guys next week for the Bourne Ultimatum. Thanks for joining us tonight. Cheers.
Cheers.